Welcome to the Virtual Strategic Solutions Virtual Reality Simulation System. Accessing Legacy Dataset. Files loaded, simulation ready. The Pittsburgh Union, or simply the Union, is a faction in the ruins of the Pitt. Pre-war, the Union was a steelworkers union located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. As of 2104, they are a resistance confederation of Pittsburgh residents at war with the raider group known as the Fanatics. The most important of the local chapters is Local 42. Uniting Pittsburgh workers, the local branch was centered around Pittsburgh Steel and was referred to as the pride of the Union by its leaders. It was one of the most important organizations fighting for workers' rights at the steelworks. Their employers were ramping up production quotas to unreasonable levels, without a comparable increase in wages. Coupled with the devastating toll of the 10-year-long Sino-American War, the Union was ready to organize the first strike at the steelworks in over 20 years, led by Hal Caldwell. With the automation riots out in Appalachia, especially the labor wars in Beckley and Welch, the Union had the ear of the management and negotiations started in early October 2077. However, these negotiations were interrupted by the Great War. The Local 42 reorganized in the wake of the nuclear devastation, focusing on bringing order and stability to the wrecked Pittsburgh. Their goal was to use industrial strength to restore Pittsburgh to its former glory. These efforts culminated in the restoration of entire factories, including a steel mill and the foundry. The Union was thus able to produce pre-war quality equipment by recycling metal salvaged by field teams or provided by the mill, and remained the only group in the Pit that had access to quality industrial production. However, the Union did not realize the threat of the Fanatics soon enough. The Union tried to coexist and merely make the Fanatics keep their distance rather than engage in total war. Orders for fighters were to fire warning shots first, but these were routinely disregarded. The combination of Hellcat Company support and viciousness pushed the Union back on the defensive. Even seemingly safe spaces turned out to be anything but. The unstable geology of the trench provided some protection for the Sanctum, a major Union safehouse home to nearly 40 people. However, it was rooted out and fell to the Fanatics. By October 2104, they lost the mill and the foundry to the Fanatics, and the situation soon worsened due to constant raids and the loss of one of the largest food stores of the Union. The Union became a resistance movement against the raiders' expansion. Anyone willing to help them against the Fanatics was welcome to join, resulting in an eclectic mix of aging steelworkers and factory hands, survivalists and other strange bedfellows. However, the Union needed outside help, especially the Local 42, led by Skippy Rurich, which took the brunt of the attacks. Against the wishes of the 42's officer, Hex, Skippy left the Pit and traveled south to Appalachia. Acting as a representative for the Union, he requested help from the Vault dwellers of Vault 76 to help fight for the Union and repel the Fanatics from taking over the Pit. The arrival of battle-hardened veterans of Appalachia and its many nightmares was a welcome surprise, especially since Hex did not believe that Skippy would stay true to his word. It was a necessary help too, as the Union's back was against the wall by 2104, with only minor victories to stem the Fanatic onslaught. The veterans would come in handy, carrying out raids to gather supplies, free slaves, sabotage equipment, and gather intelligence. The loss of the foundry made the 42 the most driven and determined to retake what was lost, regardless of the opinion of other locals in the Pit. The Union is very organized and investigates any breaches of security to ensure they will not happen again, especially if the result is losing vital supplies. Spies are also sent to infiltrate the ranks of the Fanatics, made possible by their disorganized nature, feeding vital intel to the Union and helping organize raids to secure supplies, information, and other necessities. Despite the brutal war with the Fanatics, some Union members have tried to reform captured Fanatics, especially if they were their childhood friends. After the Great War, the Union persisted and worked to make Pittsburgh into a safe refuge. Their fight against raiders and Fanatics in particular is motivated by an overarching goal of creating a peaceful tomorrow for Pittsburgh, rallying the sane denizens of the once great Steel City to fight against the forces of evil. Sacrifices, the Union believe, are necessary to achieve victory, and the dead and the lost are remembered for their service to victory. Skippy Rurik is from Pittsburgh from before the Great War. His father worked in the steel mills, but Skippy decided to become a tinkerer for an armaments firm instead. Although he lived a stable life, he also found it quite boring. When the Great War happened, he felt like he truly woke up and became far more aware of the world and his role in it. He was able to survive due to being present in a strongly constructed factory. In 2104, Skippy joined the new group at the White Spring Refuge. Not wanting to give Pittsburgh over to the Fanatics because of how dear the city is to him, he requests the help of vault dwellers to free it from the raiders. Hex has been trying to salvage Pittsburgh for years after the Great War. The city's worsening state has left her both disheartened, yet motivated to save its remains. Hex mentions that most of the city's freedom fighters were hardly more than children while trying to care for the city and its people. Hex hints that she once woke up to her best friend trying to strangle her because radiation exposure damaged their brain. By 2104, Hex wishes to reclaim the pit from the Fanatics and aims to gather volunteers to perform a raid on the foundry. Although the foundry was once claimed by the Union and reclaiming it will not be an easy task for the Union, Hex recognizes the foundry's vast resources could prove to be a turning point in the local civil war. She knew Skippy Rurik before he left for Appalachia, and she had doubts that he would abandon the Union like many others she knew. However, she was relieved when he sent help from volunteers for the responders. Hex was also familiar with Pat Gerber, a member of the local 29, and once showed him the corpse of a trog. Ava Rose was born with a bad spine and was bedridden for most of her childhood. On the morning of her 7th birthday, she got out of bed and walked. When the bombs of the Great War fell, Ava recounts witnessing a man blister in front of her. She states that she curled up on the ground until all the sounds faded, finding herself surrounded by rubble but alive. As an older woman, Ava became caught in the battle between the Union and the Fanatics. She once stayed in the sanctum when it was a peaceful and secure place, but when it was taken over by the Fanatics, Ava ran for her life and managed to escape. She eventually decided to go on a wandering journey and found herself at the pit. She believed she was guided back to help those in need. Ava is a Christian, as she mentions the Holy Spirit, and thinks her presence in aiding the dire situation is a result of God's plan for her. She wonders if the horrors of the wasteland are a test from God and hopes that her good deeds will earn her a place in heaven after death. She views everyone as being God's children, even the Fanatics. She believes they are suffering, and that because they believe themselves beyond redemption, they only dig themselves deeper in their immoral actions. Wicker is a member of the Pittsburgh Union, located in the pen in the pit. He performs odd jobs for the Union. He has recently been hunting for new materials when the Fanatics are not around. Wicker gives the task of finding 5 steel ingots, as well as looking for stolen supplies inside the foundry.